So we know we are dealing with adnexal masses, and we all know what are the problems of adnexal masses which we see. This is the slide which tells you what are the pathologies which we can come across. Mostly it is a teratoma or a dermoid and a mucinous cyst or a serous cyst adenoma, and diagnosis can be done by a transvaginal ultrasound. And on ultrasound, you can find these features of various types of ovarian cyst and adnexal masses, but MRI can be done safely in pregnancy. And my journey started with MRI and tumor markers in the year 2010 when I got a patient with an adnexal mass with pregnancy. These are the complications which you can come across, and basically you have to decide when to operate and when not to operate. So if you have something which is more than 6 centimeter and is not resolving, well, you have to go in and put a scope or do a laparotomy and try to assess whether you are dealing with a benign or a malignant tumor. This is my paper which got published, which was a study of 44 cases in the European Journal, that is the Clinical and Experimental Obstetrics and Gynecology. 1 in 80, we had adnexal masses range from 1 in 8,000. The objective was to study the incidence, histological types, complication, and the management. This study was done in my department from 2014 to 16, and actually the first case I came across was in 2010 and 11, and it gave me an opportunity to take a candle in a dark room, and if you search for something and your eyes are open, and if there is a light which you can see, even the darker side can be brighter. There is always a bright light at the end of the tunnel, and that's what I got. 44 cases from 2011 onwards till 2016. It was basically to evaluate what are the types of the adnexal masses which we came across. It was non-pregnant patients were excluded, and we found that in our present series we had 44 cases analyzed amongst 21,000 number of deliveries which took place in our institute. If you see, the maximum number of adnexal masses in my series was from 26 to 30, and it corroborated with Afichart Chitarcharya, where it was from 28.9 to 4.8 years. If you compare my also series, most of these cases were para 1, and similarly with that of Tayyaba Majid. So I given a comparison where multiparity is also seen. Distribution more commoner seen in second trimester as compared to the first trimester, and majority were diagnosed on ultrasound or incidentally with a tumor mass being seen. Most of these cases were operated in the second trimester because that is the safest time when you can go ahead and the fetus is quite safe. And you can see that 19 cases were operated between 11 and 20 weeks, that is about 61.2%. This graph will also tell you the size of the tumor, which extended from 6 to 10 centimeter in 17 cases. And the mean size in Migrachi et al. Case was also 8.5 as compared to Ergan Noglu et al. At 8 centimeter. I am giving you references of comparative studies. CA125 was done in 30 cases, and it was found that none of these values were more than 56 units, international units per ml. Now here if you see the complication, most of them were in torsion, hemorrhage was in 2. There was not a single case of malignancy, and I talked to Dr. Tongaonkar, Hemant Tongaonkar, who was the head of the Hinduja Gynae Oncology. Before that he was in Tata, and he has said, Niranjan, I have only seen 3 cases of malignancy in my lifetime. So it was very rare for me to see any case in the next 4 years which I did the study. Management wise, if you see comparatively, we had 11 cases conserved and rest of 31 had to be surgically operated, some of them electively and on emergency basis. And this is what the histopathology report tells us, that the commonest one which we found were teratomas, mucinous cystadenomas accounting to 29 percentage, and the rest were other. And if you compare this along with the other authors, you can find similarly by Hess et al., Agrawal and Ballard. Perinatal outcome, The best part is that more than 50% of them delivered vaginally. So if you have done a surgery on these patients, it's not that you have to take them for a cesarean section. And none of them had an obstructed labor. So that was very calm and quite heartening to the heart. Two patients, however, had spontaneous abortion, and that was comparatively similar to that of a Japanese study. So basically, in addition to this, you can get an ectopic pregnancy, heterotrophic pregnancy. Of course, there are gynecological indications, but it's always better to do a laparoscopy than an open surgery. However, you have to understand that it might cause some fetal depression because of the CO2, but it has a shorter stay. There is a Swedish health registry which I would like to share, and they did in 2000 laparoscopies prior to 20 weeks. And they concluded that there is no significant difference in IUGR, congenital malformations, stillbirths, neonatal births, etc. And it is usually better timing to be done in the second trimester. And laparoscopic procedure, the duration of the intervention is slightly longer, but I will tell you, you have to understand that it is quite safe nowadays. And even SAGE in 2008 has recommended placing pneumatic compression devices on the lower limb, and you can also give heparin in such cases. But obviously, tocolysis is the must to be given in such cases. The operatively, you don't have to give any enema to this patient. And these are the orders which we write. Take a proper informed consent, explain them the complications. Patient position is usually with a low lithotomy or maybe a supine with leftward tilt. And you have to avoid significant compression of the gross abdominal vessels. Even in the American Gastrointestinal Endoscopic Surgery published in 2011, they maintain that a RT tube is always better and all these positions have to be better to be done. Open accent technique was used by me in 2010, and later on I just used a direct entry trocar, but you have to be very precise, or you can use a Veress needle. You do not want to cause any injury to the abdominal organs. And this is a wonderful presentation here. You can see where the cross are there. You can go on putting all those trocars, second port, third port, and fourth port. And it's very important that the size of the uterus has to be knowing before that. You do an ultrasound also pre-operatively and post-operatively to see the fetal heart sounds. Electrocautery can also be used, but all the specimens should be retrieved from the endobag. Fetal assessment is pre-op and post-op, and it is just a beginning of a challenge. The surgery just doesn't end the whole story. It is the delivery of the baby. That is the case is complete. And that's what my senior told me when I was sitting in a Nagpur conference in 2011. And then I had an interview on Doordarshan and the media followed me, and then rest is history. CTG is very important to be done in the recovery room, and painkillers can be given slightly, but NSAID should be avoided in post-operative. Complication is not risk-free. Well, there are certain types of abortion which can occur, but anesthetic complications have to be taken into consideration, and this has to be there seen from a microscopic point of view. You have all these complications which can occur, and you have to prevent them, including post-operative nausea, vomiting, and pain, for which you can treat this. So there is a risk of pregnancy loss and the likelihood of intrauterine IUGR, abortions, teratogenic effect of anesthesia cannot be ruled out. And obviously CO2 is causing hypercarbia and further hypoxemia in the babies. All these things have to be considered. These are all the risk of perforations or injuries which can occur into the patient's uterus or the other organs. And this is what you can have, even a fetal distress or a stillbirth or a direct fetal damage. So you have to be very careful when you're using laparoscopic instruments. Increased abdominal pressure is also there. There is a reduction of the blood flow to the vena cava because of that gas which is caused, and maternal acidosis and fetal hypoxia. So well, this is the risk which you have to take, and I'm sure most of us are doing now laparoscopy in pregnancy. I want to share this, my first report, fourth gravida, 25-year-old. This is the patient which had come post-operatively. You can see those scars which I operated. I followed them antenatally for 5 months, and later on at fourth month I had operated her. This is the wonderful picture of an MRI. You can see the uterus and the left adnexal mass as going high up as up till the Palmer's point. And we did the first Hassan's technique in India, and also we removed the cyst, and there was 300 cc of serous fluid. The patient withstood the procedure, and this is the mother and the baby following delivering of a 2.8 kg female child. Regular antenatal.
Sorry to interrupt. We have 2 minutes remaining.
Yes, I'm on time. Thank you. This is the first paper which got published. And I'll tell you, this patient that was operated by us in 2010, she delivered in 2011, and it took me 3.5 years to publish this case in Bombay Hospital Journal. Nowadays, you can just publish and it gets published within 3 months in internet journals. But this is what we went, Rupali, myself, Chinmay Patki, and others, where we performed laparoscopic cyst ovarian cystectomy at a 20 week size. This is another operations which can be done by other authors. And I would like to also talk about this heterotopic pregnancy, which I had published in 1998. That is probably 22 years before. Well, we don't have time for the video, but I'm sure antenatal ultrasound is the most important thing to diagnose adnexal masses. Most of them are benign, rarely they are malignant, and it's reasonable to remove all these ovarian masses more than 10 centimeter. You have to evaluate properly. Go ahead, it's a challenge, but I'm sure you will win this situation. And the best joy is when you have the mother and the baby in the hand and you hand it over to the mother. That's what an obstetrician comes and an endoscopist comes into play. Thank you so much. I think I'm on time.